Hello, and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil S-Truth Harrison. You're listening to Season 2, Episode 12. All episodes are available in both video and podcast format at myweekinbaseball.com. And thank you to Rose Petal Studios for the artwork and logos created especially for this show and website. You'll find Rose Petal Studios on Instagram at rosepetal_studios. Also, thanks to Brunjo Productions in Nashville for our intro music. Learn more at brunjo.com. Well, there is a lot of baseball in the news today, my friends. We've got a no-hitter by former Tiger and recent Philly Michael Lorenzen, a ball that vanished in Fenway Park, Miguel Cabrera reaching the top 20 in hits for a career, the non-trade of Eduardo Rodriguez, unexpected consequences of rule changes that may eventually affect Cal Ripken Jr.'s record of consecutive games played, and a pitcher who gets a win without actually getting anyone out. Of course, we'll also have a trivia teaser and a timely limerick, our baseball limerick, along the way. So let's get right to it. We'll start with the trivia question. What current MLB pitcher has a career OPS of 710, including 7 home runs, and played 6 games for the Cincinnati Reds as a center fielder back in 2019, while also pitching in 73 games with an excellent 2.92 ERA? Oh, and by the way, his 710 on-base plus slugging was the same as the entire Kansas City Royals team averaged that same year. So yes, this is a pitcher who can hit, who is not named Ohtani. We'll have a clue and the answer a little later in the broadcast. So next up, Michael Lorenzen tossed a no-hitter against the Washington Nationals on August 9. This was his first home game in Philadelphia since the Tigers traded him at the end of July. But it wasn't a given that he'd even get to pitch the whole game. After 7 innings, he'd already hit that magic mark of 100 pitches. And his manager, Rob Thompson, said, "I'll give you 20 more, so you'd better get some quick outs." And did he ever, getting through the 8th inning in just 11 pitches. Then the fans gave him a standing ovation as he approached the mound for the 9th inning. And he breezed through that 9th, finishing the game in a career-high 124 pitches. Now, Michael Lorenzen has pitched for 9 seasons in the major leagues. He has a career 3.94 ERA, which is certainly good, but he also averages giving up just over 8 hits per every 9 innings pitched. So not a guy you'd think would be likely to pitch a no-hitter, but he's having a terrific season, the best season of his career, and I wish him all the best with the Phillies. It's a great way to start out with a new team, your first home game in the new uniform, throwing a no-hitter. I hope he helps the Phillies get to the World Series. Way to go, Michael Lorenzen. Congratulations. Next, the disappearing ball trick. Also on August 9 of this year, 2023, a strange but true occurrence in Boston's Fenway Park. A fly ball was hit to left towards the short but very tall wall known as the Green Monster. Sox left fielder Masataka Yoshida jumped to make the play against the wall, and he thought for a moment he had caught the ball. But then he opened his glove, and it wasn't there. He looked around, and he could see it was also not on the warning track, nor was it on the grass in the outfield. The wall is so tall, it could not have been a home run. What in the heck happened? Turns out the ball was hit so hard that it broke the lens cover over the light bulb in the part of the scoreboard that shows the number of outs. The ball was actually inside the light. What was the call? Well, if you said ground rule double, you are correct. And that prevented a run from scoring. The runner had to go back to third base, which allowed the Red Sox to win the game. Red Sox manager Alex Cora was quoted as saying, quote, "We go over the rules," meaning before every game, "and they always talk about if the ball gets stuck in the monster." And I'm like, that's not going to happen. Today it did. Today it did indeed. Oh, and one last thing. The maintenance crew replaced the light cover so quickly and efficiently that one fan commented they ought to ask the maintenance person to play second base. Next, Miguel Cabrera reaches the top 20 in career hits. He now has more hits than both Robin Yount and Tony Gwynn. And on August 8, Cabrera got 3 hits in 4 at-bats, raising his career hit total to 3,143, putting him at number 19 on the all-time list. Now, there are a few people who are close on the leaderboard. George Brett, Adrian Beltre, and Cal Ripken Jr. are ahead of Miggy. He needs 9 more to catch Brett, 23 more to catch Adrian Beltre, and 35 to reach Ripken. So does he have a realistic shot in this, his last season, to catch any of those 3 guys ahead of him, say to move up to number 18 or 17 or 16? And really, does it even matter? Because he's in the top 20. The top 20 career leaders in hits in over 100 years of baseball. Wow. Anyhow, the Tigers have 48 games left to play. So if Miggy played all 48 of those games, which he certainly will not, and if he got a hit in every single one of those games, then he would pass all 3 of those guys. He's currently hitting .264. That is his best batting average in 4 years, and he's been hitting quite well lately. But he's only played in 67 games all season long. So with just 48 games to go, what's realistic? Could he play half of those games? Yeah, maybe, 20, 25. He could possibly play in half of the games. He definitely could eclipse Brett, being just 9 hits away. And I think he has an outside shot to reach Beltre. So if he played, say, in 24, 25 games, he's 23 hits shy. He did get about 1 hit a game in order to do that. So he's still going to have to do very well. And AJ Hinch is going to have to put him into enough games for that to happen. So passing Brett, probably. Passing Beltre, not likely, but there's a shot. Ripken, I don't think so. Still, congratulations to Miguel Cabrera. That really puts things in perspective when you see him against the all-time great players in the history of the game. Now, a little bit about a non-trade, the non-trade of Eduardo Rodriguez from the Tigers. But before I do that, I want to compliment MLB and their graphics team on a really clever graphic that they used at the trade deadline on MLB.com. If you didn't see it, it's a series of poker chips kind of representing the risk involved, the kind of gamble involved when you make those last second trades at the end of July, hoping to put your team into the playoffs and eventually the World Series. But it had 3 stacks of chips with the colors of 3 of the contending teams who were active at the trade deadline. One of them is the Orioles. So it has a stack of orange and white chips with the little Oriole logo above it. And then the next one is the Phillies, red and white chips with the little Phillies logo with a kind of Liberty Bell background. And then finally the Texas Rangers, blue and white chips with the red Texas T above them. It's very well done, a clever graphic. Kudos to the artist and designer who created that logo. So what about Eduardo Rodriguez? The Tigers had in place a deal to send him to the Los Angeles Dodgers for a prospect that they seemed genuinely interested in, a prospect that would have made the trade worth doing. Rodriguez is in a unique situation, one, because he has a no trade clause to 10 teams that to whom he could block a trade, and also because he has a opt out at the end of the season, or he can not opt out and stay with the team for another 3 seasons. This made it hard to find a trading partner. One possibility would be the Tigers trading Rodriguez to a team he couldn't block, and then that team trading some other pitcher to the Dodgers. But then the Dodgers wouldn't have gotten the guy they wanted. They really wanted Rodriguez. They talked to his agent. It seemed like he was willing to waive his no trade clause. And I used to think that no trade clauses were tried to prevent you from being shipped away to a non-contending team and maybe to a city you didn't want to play in for some reason. But as I've come to find out, they tend to prevent trades to the contending teams. They tend to pick the Dodgers and the Yankees and some of the other top teams on their list. And it really helps give that player leverage then, because those are the teams who are most likely to be interested in them at the trade deadline. A clever thing to do. And so Rodriguez, from what I hear, was not asking for something unreasonable. From what I can tell, it seems like he was asking for an additional year on his contract at $20 million, which, believe it or not, is a bargain for a player of his caliber, at least certainly the way he is pitching this year. The Dodgers would not agree to whatever those terms were. We don't know for sure it was 1 year and $20 million. We just know that they couldn't, at the last minute, agree to what was asked of them in the contract changes. According to Rodriguez, it really came down to a few things, primarily his family being comfortable in Detroit and he liking playing and pitching in Detroit, which is a big deal, and says a lot about the city of Detroit and the fans and the community there. And the other aspect of it was the contractual aspect, that he legitimately used his leverage to try to say, hey, yeah, I'll go to the Dodgers, but if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to disrupt my family and we're going to do that, you need to make it worth my while. I'm more interested in staying Detroit than I am in just pitching for a contender. That was interesting. I don't think a lot of players would have done that. There's been some online commentary trying to be critical, I think even of him, although most people back him up and say, hey, this is in his contract. He had a legitimate right to turn down the trade, which he certainly did. And I have no problem with that. Some people also tried to criticize Detroit's management, saying that Scott Harris should have had a plan B, another option in his back pocket. I do think they did have a plan B, but they didn't have time to implement it. And I think that plan B would have been to trade him to a team that was not on his no trade list, one that he could not have blocked. But by the time they realized he was going to block the LA deal, they couldn't pivot quickly enough. It would have been a complicated 3-team trade. That's something you need probably days, if not a week or more, to work out. Anyway, I'm glad that Rodriguez is staying, ERod, as he's known. He's an excellent pitcher, having the best season of his career. I hope that he does not opt out and he decides that, yeah, my family really likes it here and I want to stay. I hope he stays in Detroit for the rest of his contract. I think the Tigers will be contenders over that at some point during that 3-year period of his current contract. Or maybe the Tigers will sweeten the deal and maybe they'll say, hey, we'll add the extra year for $20 million if that's what it takes. So I'm glad he's staying. You know, one reason is, especially with the trade of Michael Lorenzen, the Tigers lost a top starting pitcher. He lost their all-star pitcher. And with that, they lose the innings that guy can pitch. One, Lorenzen can go deep into a game, as we just saw, a 9-inning complete game no-hitter. And two, the quality of the innings, even if you could have another pitcher on your AAA team or somebody coming back from injury who could replace the innings, they're not going to replace the innings at the same level. You're not going to be able to compete. And if we lost both of those top starting pitchers, they were our number 1 and number 2 starting pitchers, Rodriguez and Lorenzen. Losing them both would have been an abysmal ending for this Tigers season, I really think they would have tanked. And please, who wants to watch Reese Olson and Alex Fado giving up so many runs night after night? Tiger fans have had plenty of that already. So thank you, Eduardo Rodriguez, for staying with the team. I hope your future is in Detroit, and I hope that we will see a contending team during your time with the Tigers. Next up, something to honk about. A pitcher gets a win without getting anyone out, at least not as the result of his pitching. Yes, this actually happened. On July 24 of this year, reliever Bryan Baker of the Orioles was credited with a win in the O's 3-2 victory over the Phillies in Philadelphia. In a tie game with 2 out and 2 on in the 8th, Baker came in and faced one batter. He gave up a single. The first runner scored, but during the play, the second runner, Bryce Harper, was thrown out at the plate, which ended the inning. It was the only batter that Baker faced. Then in the top of the 9th, the Orioles rallied to take the lead. In the bottom of the 9th, another reliever for the Orioles, Cionel Perez, puts 2 guys on, but manages to get out of the inning and earn his very first save of the year. And since Baker was the pitcher of record at the time the Orioles took the lead, he was credited with a win. Now, he also, curiously, got a blown save because he came into a tie game and gave up the run that broke the tie, that actually put his team behind, because as you'll recall, there were 2 runners on base when he gave up the hit, and the first one scored before the second one was mercifully thrown out. Isn't that crazy? In my view, the official score should have given the win to Cionel Perez, the relief pitcher. And they are allowed to do that. So there's some curious rules about how a win is credited to a pitcher. According to MLB.com's rules, under relief win, quote, in a rarely used clause, an official score can deem a relief pitcher's appearance brief and ineffective, and the scorer can award the win to the pitcher who followed. So if they had done that, that means Cionel Perez, the pitcher who closed out the game and got a save, instead could have been credited with the win, in which case there would not have been a save. So I guess it works out best for both pitchers the way it happened. Perez gets a save. As a reliever, that's probably more valuable to him statistically than it is to get a win. But it certainly doesn't seem right to have a guy come in, face one batter, not actually get the batter out, get lucky on a play at the plate to get the final out of the inning, and then go on, having faced only that one batter, giving up one hit, to actually be credited with a win. Okay, enough on that topic. Next up, the unexpected effect of rule changes. Stars are playing more games. Why? There's less wearing and tearing on their legs. 2 rules have made a difference: the pitch timer and, surprisingly, to me at least, the shift ban. I get this information from an article in The Athletic by Anthony Castrovinci. And I urge you to check out theathletic.com, not because I get anything from it, but because it's a great place for in-depth articles, stuff you'll never get from MLB. Anyhow, from this article, I learned that Braves third baseman Austin Riley is benefiting both from less time in the field and from less moving around while he's on the field. Riley plays a lot of games. In fact, he has played all but 4 games during the past 3 seasons. He's very durable, a great hitter, excellent power. The Braves are lucky to have him. One thing in the rule changes is that, as we know, games are shorter than they were due to the pitch clock. They're roughly a half an hour shorter this season than they were in the past. And if you do the math, that is approximately 80 hours over a full season, or put another way, it's 2 full 40-hour work weeks of just standing. So you're saving 80 hours of just standing around on your legs in the field, waiting for the pitcher to step off the mound and step up back on, waiting for the batter to adjust their gloves. So that is helping the players remain more fresh. That part's not as surprising to me. The part that was surprising to me is that the rule change of banning shifts has apparently saved an incredible amount of moving around. Atlanta's statistical team says that Austin Riley has been saved 45 miles of running. 45 miles of running back and forth for positional changes for the shift. I guess he's running over to where the shortstop should be, or running over closer to second base in that part of the field in past seasons. And they're running back and forth, adjusting for the next batter. And it adds up to 45 miles. So those two factors, shorter games, less time standing around, and a shift ban, less time running back and forth, means that it's easier for the players to play a full game and to play the next game after that, and the next game after that. So what does this mean for the all-time record of consecutive games played? Could somebody approach Cal Ripken Jr.'s unbelievable Ironman record of 2,632 games played? He started that in May of 1982. It went through September of 1998. 17 consecutive seasons worth of playing every single game. I don't know. I don't know that anybody's going to catch that. Well, Steve Garvey is a number 4 on the all-time list. He's got less than half that many consecutive games. He played a little over 1,200 consecutive games. And at number 5, Miguel Tejada is a little over 1,100 consecutive games. And if you want to try to break into the top 10, the bar drops even farther. Just as an example, the great Stan Musial is number 8 on the all-time list of consecutive games at 895. So if you could get up around 800 or so, you could be breaking into the top 10, right? You don't need to match Cal Ripken's 2,600 plus consecutive games. Well, so let's just talk about what's going on. Who's playing consecutive games right now? Is this even possible? Well, last year in 2022, there were only 2 players, Matt Olson and Dansby Swanson, who both played for the Braves last year. Those 2 guys both played all 162 games. They're the only 2 players in baseball who did it last year. So they're the only 2 coming into this year, 2023, that had any lengthy consecutive game streak to go from. This year, Olson has played in all 112 games that the Braves have played so far, which gives him a streak of 274. So just a couple of thousand more to go to start to challenge Cal Ripken. Dansby Swanson, who in the offseason signed with the Chicago Cubs, has now played in 101 of his team's 115 games. So he's out. His streak is over. So the only player right now in MLB with a reasonable streak of any kind is first baseman Matt Olson of the Braves. So certainly a tough thing to do. I don't really think Cal Ripken Jr.'s record is ever going to be seriously challenged because the health of the players is so important. They're making so much money. Teams are going to give guys a day off now and again. And even Matt Olson, even if he goes through this year, maybe he goes even through one more year. That would be something to play, say, even 3 years every single game. At some point, he's going to get a day off, or he's going to get hurt and miss a game. So not likely to happen. However, it is true that more players are playing more games. There are more guys playing close to their team's full schedule. Say 162 games. They're not playing 162, but they're playing 150, 155. That is on the rise. And I do think that, as this article from The Athletic points out, that is due to the rule changes, the unintended consequences of quicker games, and banning the shift. So next up, a tribute to Cal Ripken Jr. and his incredible, likely unbeatable consecutive games played streak. So here we go. For Ripken, it started in May. More than 2,000 straight games did he play. But with today's change in rules, will the Stars go old school and break Dear Cal's record one day? And now the answer to today's trivia question. I'll repeat the question and then give you a clue. What current MLB pitcher played 6 games for the Cincinnati Reds as a center fielder back in 2019, while also pitching in 73 games? Your clue is he also just added a no-hitter to his resume as well. Of course, by now you know the answer. It's none other than Michael Lorenzen. So that's all for today, my friends. Join us next time, because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? As always, I'm your host, Phil S. Truth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.